Okay, folks, thank you for coming back. This is quite weird for me, because normally Alex introduces the second half, but this time Alex is in the second half, so I'm going to explain what's happening. A few months ago we had a speaker we didn't think was going to turn up. There was a bit of a panic, and they did arrive, but I said to Alex afterwards, we've got loads of people here, everybody's got a story, and some of those stories are going to be quite interesting. Mine's quite boring, I think, but others will be interesting. So I said, we could do a panel event and ask people, questions from the floor, people to share their stories. So that's where this idea came from. So the way this is going to work is I've got a couple of questions to start, but they're not in any particular order. So if you've got a question you'd like to aim at the panel, fire a question in this direction. If it's for a particular person, feel free to name them. Otherwise, I'll just point and we'll go from there. Does that sound reasonable? Lovely. Hopefully everybody's got at least one question, otherwise this will wrap up incredibly quickly. So, on the basis I'm scared of getting people's names wrong for pronunciation, the first question is, please tell us your name and roughly how long you've worked in tech.
So my name's Ellie, my surname is Italian, so it goes as Parutto, and I've worked in tech for a year and a half.
Okay.
I'm a newbie.
It's alright, newbies are good.
Yeah, so I'm Glenn Wilson, live locally, and I've been in tech not as long as you. I guess about 20 years, 22 years, 23 years, something like that.
Okay.
And I'm Alex Cachia, I have the name that no one can pronounce, and I've been in tech for 8 years now, yeah.
Okay, so we've got quite a range, which is good. So leading on from that then, can you tell us a bit about... We get jingles, excellent. Can you tell us a bit about your current role?
Are we going in order?
We'll go back the other way, Alex.
My current role?
Yeah.
Okay, so I am a freelance web and database developer.
Okay.
So I do mostly bug fixes, some new builds. I also obviously run Code Harbour, and I've recently started a part-time master's course in artificial intelligence.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah, so most of you probably know that I'm a security geek. So I'm a freelance consultant. I advise companies on how to do security well, and been doing that for about 7 years. So if you've got any questions about security, you can ask me. And I'm also a host of a meetup as well, called London DevSecOps. So it's been running for about 6 years. I also run a podcast and also an author of a book on DevSecOps as well. So that's...
With one spelling mistake.
With one, the book's got one spelling mistake.
So the story there is that I wrote the book and I passed it on to Jonathan to proofread it as one of the proofreaders. And he proofread it, also the copy editors and the proofreaders from the publishers, they obviously sent feedback and everything. About 3 months after it was published, Jonathan humbly came up to me and said, do you know there's a spelling mistake in the book? And I said, is there? Where's that? He said, it's near the end, it's in acknowledgements. You spelt my name wrong.
It was the only bit I hadn't seen because it wasn't written. So,
I'm a data analyst. It's not sexy as security, but I work in cyber security. So there you go.
So my question is, tell us more.
No, actually, what I do is I'm actually really a data analyst. That's my thing, and I do Power BI dashboards for the cyber function where I work at the moment. Mm-hmm. And I was served notice last week, which is interesting.
Hopefully you get to progress somewhere.
It's already progressed, it is fine.
Okay, that's good, that's good. Any other questions from the floor then?
I have a question for the security guy. Glenn?
Security guy.
Yeah, okay, so you advise companies on what to do with their privacy, but what about your personal privacy? Like your personal setup?
Yeah, I'm actually quite a... So my girlfriend would think I'm a real pain in the arse because I'm always having to go at her for not doing good security. I won't let anyone in my stuff at home. I use a password manager. I've got a segregated network for me and the rest of the family. That sounds like, it's probably comical, but there's some serious side to that is that I don't actually trust them with their own devices. They both have they both have Androids, and they're forever downloading videos, clicking on links in WhatsApp chat groups and stuff like that. And if any one of those got onto the network, I could end up being hit by a ransomware. So I keep the. To answer your question, I practice what I preach.
It's a problem being a security person, isn't it? You get bitten and your career goes poof. Okay, any others then? I'm not going to have to go.
What password manager do you use?
Ooh.
Not LastPass. Right? So
LastPass is one of my good friends works at LastPass. He actually joined the week before they had
their latest incident.
And he's good in his
strangely coincidental.
he's head of compliance. I use Dashlane at the moment, but I also use Keychain because I'm a Apple person. So Keychain and Dashlane together.
I actually have a question.
The panel asking the panel questions.
I was curious to ask. So you say Ellie?
Ellie, yeah.
Obviously, you've gone into the tech world quite recently, didn't you?
Year and a half.
Just wondered, what was it like for you going in as a woman? Because obviously I got mine into this. I'm just curious what it was like for you. You don't have to answer that if you don't want to, sorry.
I used to be a very sexy science teacher, okay? I need to point this out because apparently that's sexier than what I do now. And it pulls me no blokes, honestly. Anyway, so apparently we are still very much the minority at this particular point in time. The latest figures say that only 26% of the workforce are female. I was very lucky because I did a data engineering bootcamp which was aimed at females, at getting females into the tech arena, but it's still a struggle. And I suppose I do something, because for me, anything to do with tech was basically building computers until I realized that there's a lot of stuff that you can do out there. But still a lot of it is presumed that it's for boys. So even now, today, 8 years after you started, it's still for boys. The vast majority is still for boys, which there's a lot of stuff out there geared at females to get them doing tech stuff, which is quite cool. And you don't always have to talk to people, like today, which is quite nice. You can ignore people, which is quite nice. So yeah, it's still hard work.
Well, hopefully we can change that, because that's...
I think it's really important to recognise the fact that women have done a hell of a lot for the computer industry.
Yeah.
We just saw in the presentation, Lady Lovelace wrote the very first computer program. You showed us the women working at NASA that did a lot of computational stuff that they were the computers. You also had Grace Hopper, who was also writing computer programs before anyone else did. I think she wrote Pascal, wasn't it? I think it was Pascal. And there's no reason why women can't join this industry and be part of this industry. And it was great that you decided to join us a year and a half ago. But please encourage women into your companies, into your departments, into your teams. And I think speaking as a man, I think is important.
I'm fierce like that, so I try to be fierce like that. Kind of like what do you do with the torch? I can't. I'm Italian. I can't pass the. No, not really. You fly the flag. That's what you do. Fly the flag.
Don't go around hitting people with torches.
Fly the flag.
Maybe that's why not enough women in computing. We keep attacking people with torches.
There was a question over the back, and then I'll come back around the room.
Yeah, this was to Glenn.
Security guy.
It's quite a local one. So, what do you wish you had known now, when you was first starting your career? What advice would you give a younger self today?
Security is very sexy, right?
Yeah.
Very sexy.
So my career has taken quite a few turns. So I started off working in market research. Market research led me to doing data analytics. Data analytics led me to programming. Programming led me to security. I think I would probably tell my younger self to travel more, get out there and see more of the world, understand more world views, understand different cultures, because I think that is a great way to develop as a person. Yes. So, not quite a technical question, but
No,
yeah, I'd say
travel
get out
more.
there, travel
Yeah.
more, work overseas more.
Thank you.
Yeah, go for it.
Again, for Glenn, sorry.
You're going to have to spread these out.
Yeah.
I'm interested in kind of firmware level security in IoT devices. I've had a couple of instances where some strange IoT objects have appeared on my network, indistinguishable Chinese characters, etc. When we tracked it down, we're basically turning everything off, and the only last thing that's on must be it. They just appear to be really badly designed IoT devices that haven't been labelled or locked down. Are you working at that level?
No, I don't work at that level.
No.
I work at more the strategic level, so I would go into companies and say, be wary of.
Where are your people at Campbell?
You need to go into IoT device manufacturers and put some strategy in for them, because they don't know what they're doing.
The problem is there's nothing to tell them not to do it. So this is an area that I've been involved in the past. And the issue is that it costs money to implement security and to follow good practices, and if there isn't somebody looking over your shoulder telling you to do it, then it just ends up being a race to the bottom. And the issue is that outside of big names who obviously have the visibility of people looking over their shoulders and saying, if this goes wrong, so like Amazon and people where they have problems with the devices and it becomes very big public news. But if it's some random IoT device that's just like, oh, it's just a smart switch that goes into your wall, most people just going to look for the cheapest version of that they can find, and they're not going to worry about anything else. And because there's no repercussions for them really, it's a small company, especially if they're being white labeled, then why are they going to bother spending the time and money? I mean, I've worked with payment terminals, and the security that was put in place there didn't even match up, and that was being followed around by people with the ability to enforce it, but no one bothered looking, so they didn't bother following.
Well, misnaming an IoT device is a strategy basically to kind of put you kind of away from the device, make you maybe scared of it to a point. And also you need to consider, how do you define IoT device? Okay, computer considered to be IoT device, right? So with the computer you could implement the security net. Or the Raspberry Pi, maybe it's a little bit harder because the CPU power is less. So that's also another dimension to the IoT, to the computational resources. So first you need to define what is IoT device, okay, and then you need to work on the security. If you consider high computational device as IoT device, then in this case you will look into it from different dimension, implement more kind of computational intensive methodology to protect them. But with a small IoT device, it's harder, you know, because with the IoT device normally it's Raspberry Pi, Arduino, or some other devices with very little power to process such a security method.
Can I ask a non-security question?
Yes.
Alex, you went freelance.
Yeah.
How did you make that kind of switch? Like, if you found
Why did I do
your
it?
career? Why? How?
Yeah. So basically, I was working as a software dev for a few years, then went into web development. And then while I was doing that, my sister started her own business set up. And I basically just got jealous. She gets to work in her pajamas. I want to do that. How do I make that happen? So I started doing, I actually then built a system for my sister. while I was working, thinking, okay, get a bit of experience, but also get money. And then I got made redundant 2 years into my job, and that's just when I thought, well, I could get another job that I know I don't want to keep, or I can just try now. So that's what I did. I took a part-time job as well in a kitchen and did that for a few years. I think probably a lot of you guys remember that horrible period in my life. And then, yeah, basically I, weirdly enough, ended up going full-time just before the pandemic hit. And then obviously the pandemic hit and it just took off because apparently suddenly websites were important. Who knew? Yeah, that's pretty much it for me.
And you could have worked in your pyjamas during the pandemic anyway.
I know, it was annoying. Everyone was like copying me.
Bob, did I see you had your hand up as well?
It's more. I just wanted to say something a bit more about the women in computing thing. My wife is a great advocate of that. She's raving about it, as Alan will know. I remember working with big financial firms in the 70s, and it was 50-50. I think until the 70s, the late 70s, early 80s, it was 50-50. And my wife actually wrote a paper on this, which blames, in this country anyway, the BBC Micro. Because the BBC Micro became a boys' thing. And boys, a lot of them shoot up games, there weren't games for other things. People tried, but never happened. And that's just gone on and on and on. And so girls aren't interested in going into it. And I was a university admissions officer for 14 years, and we found that our applicants from women were between, the people who actually came into us ranged between 2% and 20%, but mostly it was down at the lower end. And you know, we were desperate to get people to transfer in.
That's why you let me do
You were good. That's a real problem. There seems to be some movement now down at the bottom end. One of the things I was doing until recently was working for Barefoot Computing, which actually do computing right at the beginning of primary school. And the primary school stuff is very gender neutral, and it's hoped that over the years to come that will actually help to bring computing back into balance.
That's good. That's kind of like where, even as a former science teacher, where we were going with having STEM uptake from girls who thought that, you know, doing science was, even doing science or doing physics or that kind of stuff was for the boys. And I think there were some statistics about computer science being one of the lowest ranking among females for uptake, and it goes a bit further before you get to university, because they don't do the A levels either. So if you don't do your A levels, then you're going to struggle. So this is why they're going back.
Yeah, catch them young.
Yeah, catching them young.
But when you look at the sort of stuff they're doing at that level and working all the way up, and I think the stuff that I was doing was stopped about age 10, something like that. It was very much. There was a great spread of things, and a lot of them would appeal, you know, even to the traditional gender roles, as you say. But I mean, that shouldn't be the case, of course. But that's the reality.
So on that note, I've got a question for you then, Alex.
Okay.
So what made you decide to go to IT? What was, if it was a boy-dominated?
Yeah, well, this is the thing. I didn't know this was a thing. No, now. But again, when I first got into programming, I didn't know that there was a problem with it. So I always loved maths at school, and then basically my IT teacher convinced me to take IT. I wasn't happy at my school, so I left after AS and found an IT course. It was quite broad, so you covered like how to build a computer, but there was also programming in it. And I just did the module and went, this is amazing, this is algebra with an application, have I never seen this before, this is my life now. And I didn't know really that I would be the only woman. I didn't, because even in my class it wasn't that, but I think it's about about a third of us were women. It wasn't really until I went to uni, and until I went to computer science, and suddenly I went, hang on, there's only 10 of us. And that's sort of when I started to become more aware of it. So yeah, I really don't know. That's something that I'm quite big on, is trying to get more women to do it, because I don't understand why. I don't understand why you wouldn't want to do it, because it's awesome. So I don't know if it's maybe that, like I said, I wasn't exposed to it until I went to college. So maybe the issue is we need to be teaching things like programming at girls' schools or at young or whatever it is. I don't know. Or maybe I'm just a weirdo that just was like, yeah, let's do this.
It's a bit scary though, you know, because when
that's true.
Like, like, I have argued with my laptop over Python, and I'm right. Yeah. The Python thing, whatever.
Yeah.
So, but I remember that when I first hit that wall, I was genuinely thinking, I'm too thick for this.
Yeah.
Someone smarter
Yeah.
is going to have to do this because I can't do it. And it's something that you carry with you to an
Yeah.
extent. So, I don't know.
No. I do remember actually going for a job just after I graduated. It wasn't programming, it was actually like IT support. It wasn't what I wanted to do. But I remember at the final interview I got to meet the people who would be my bosses, and they genuinely did say, you are aware you'll be the only woman in the department. I remember them saying that, and I just kind of in my head thought, I've been doing computing for like 3 years. That is not news to me. I'm very aware that's going to be the case. But I just kind of thought that was interesting that even they were like, you sure about this? So it's, yeah, which I thought was kind of a weird thing to say in an interview. But
I think that's part of the problem, is that there's almost this, there's an awkward feedback loop as well of talking about how unusual it is for women to be in certain fields, which means that there is that sort of thought put in people's heads, which is, this is weird that I want to do this because
yeah,
I'm part of that minority. It also probably puts people off because they're aware that it's going to be
you're going to stand out.
stacked against them,
Yeah,
numbers wise.
that's true.
But it's not something you can really get. I don't have a solution to that,
No.
sadly, because you can't and you shouldn't hide from people that it's potentially going to be uncomfortable for them, because it's not fair to them to put them in that position.
Yeah. I was wondering that because, like I said, I wasn't aware that this was going to be a problem, and it's never really been an issue, but I also don't really care. So I will go into a situation, if I want to do the thing I want to do, I'm going to do it regardless. But there are obviously a lot of women that would think, well, do I want to put myself in that position? And I just wondered, did you feel that when you went into IT, were you a bit like, oh, this is quite scary actually being the only person, or were you sort of used to it?
I
Or?
think it's very much, I wouldn't call it segregated in terms of like computer programming, that's for geeks, that's not for girls really. No, well,
I'm joking, we are definitely nerds as well.
it's like, it's for clever people or for, you know, it's for boys, but then data analytics is fluffy, girls can do that as well. Sort of thing, I don't know. I find that there is a bit of segregation in the roles, depending on what you want to do,
Yeah.
like cyber, for example, is very male dominated for some I don't know why, and other than being very sexy at the moment, is also very male dominated for whatever reason, I don't know, maybe because historically it's what it is, and so it's harder to, you know, and what you do also historically is for boys,
Yeah.
so you see fewer women in that arena, but then for other jobs you've got more girls because it's more, I mean, data analytics is like filled with girls sort of things, but
Is there a lot of interpersonal relations with data analytics? Do you have to do a lot of like talking to people? Does that
God no.
Oh, no, I just think
I wouldn't be
Oh, okay,
in it. No,
okay.
no.
I'm just curious because I've noticed that
It depends
IT
on-
roles that do have more, that require more interpersonal skills, you tend to find more women. So you're getting like IT in like IT
Yeah,
support.
it
and
depends
teaching,
if
you
you're
would be
if
more
you're at the front, sort of like at the so if your relationship is with external stakeholders, then yes,
Yeah.
typically you'll find lots of ladies there. But if you more in sort of like the data engineering side of data analytics, so maintaining sort of like the back scenes sort of thing or behind the scenes sort of thing, then it's still more boys.
Yeah.
I just want to pick up on something you said earlier. So you mentioned fluffy. And I was at a talk about 3 weeks ago given by a guy called Joseph D'Souza, who wrote his doctorate paper on the language used in cybersecurity, and the language that's used in cybersecurity is very male-oriented. We talk about you know, the power structure within cybersecurity. We talk about war games, and these are quite off-putting for females, for women. They prefer to have the fluffy.
Well, it's safer.
It's safer, yeah.
I mean, if you think about gaming and gaming as a female and gaming as a male, it's like a whole kind of worms there.
Yeah.
So it's safer. It feels safer when I think it's because language is ingrained in culture, and in order to, you know, you can fight it or you can fly the flag, like I said, it's not burn the top, fly the flag, like I said before. But if you're the only person there doing that, then you'll get drowned, your voice will be drowned.
So you think that maybe the problem is that because it was a lot of men that were doing all this stuff in the beginning, the sort of culture around it has changed because the language that's being used is because that's just where it's sort of just a cycle that's being
Well,
used.
it's something, sorry, I don't
Well,
know your name, but
that's
something
Bob.
shifted.
Something shifted, and it
At
shifted
some
in the
point,
early 80s.
obviously.
If anyone watched the paper, I can send it to them. But it's quite interesting because it's still relevant, and the paper was written in the 90s, but it's actually still relevant, and you know.
And so what did they say before the shift? Did they
Before the shift, it was
no, but what did they say? Why the shift happened?
the BBC Micro,
So
the big
what's
thing in
that?
this country. So it was the home computer from the early 80s, which pushed by the BBC.
You're not that much of a nerd.
Yeah, it went into all the schools.
Yeah.
I've just been thinking about it. It went into all the schools and it became the sort of de facto early 80s home computer. And there were games on it, and all the boys would gravitate to the games and really push the girls out.
I see.
I think what somebody was going to say there, what I was saying earlier on, was that if you go back to, I think about 1951, when the Ferranti Mark I was being developed and used, there was a guy there called Conway Berners-Lee, who was Tim's father, and he married one of the programmers, and there were a lot of women programmers, in fact most of them were women, and she had to push them to get equal pay with men, despite the fact they were doing
That
exactly the
sounds
same job.
familiar.
It's nice
To this day.
It's actually in the majority. Women are in the majority.
I'm very conscious. Our friend here has
Oh,
been
yeah,
waiting
sorry.
very, very patiently. Go for it.
Yeah, thank you.
No, sorry, the guy in the check shirt. I will come back to you.
Sorry. So, I come from a weird fact. Does anyone here play chess competitively?
No.
I'm nowhere near good enough to do that competitively.
Well, I do play chess occasionally, but not in competitions.
When I was young, me, my brother and my sister, we played chess with each other. My mum got a chess book. We got relatively good at beating each other onto the book, and my mum heard there was a tournament in Kent. So we went to a tournament in Kent. And I'm 2.5 years younger than my sister, and I've got a twin brother. And we both walked out of the competition really happy. We'd come 3rd and 5th between us. And my sister had come bottom. And when she'd been playing, she was basically told she was shit because she was a girl.
Wow.
You're a girl, you can't play.
How old would she have been?
9.
Wow.
And she turned around and ended up playing for England 3 years later.
Yes, yes, she went
And she
ever.
then carried on playing for England, and now she plays for Australia. She moved to Australia. But while she was doing that, I ended up in this environment of like Chess UK. So I was going around with like British Chess Federation. There's something called the British Women's Chess Association, which is trying to get women into chess. They have exactly the same problems in chess. 95% of competitive chess players are men, and there's absolutely no reason for it except social.
Yeah,
Because
it's
there's no economic
it's
structure,
cultural.
it's just cultural.
Could that be because a lot of men don't like being told they're wrong? Believe me, I see it enough in code reviews.
I think a lot of like the social structure, the problem of how we interact as human beings in our culture are impacting us in different ways. And I think computing is one of those areas where it impacts us. But if you see that in chess, you kind of go, well, if you can't fix chess, you're not going to fix computing.
I wonder if that was actually, that wasn't helped by that film recently.
Queen's Gambit.
Oh, the Queen.
She was weird, wasn't she? And so they said, you have to be a weird girl to play chess.
Well, there's nothing gendered about that.
No, but that would have been what the message that she was quirky. Oh my God. Jesus Christ. She was quirky.
Speaking is like, I'm pretty sure the only under 20 here.
Possibly, yeah.
Oh, it's a baby.
Yeah,
This is where
I'm only backing up the BBC microbit argument and the chess argument, but I feel like the only reason why there's gender divided in the industry, I think, is because how entertainment is marketed. Like I found coding, or at least I got into it by gaming, and yeah, that's mostly marketed towards boys, isn't it? Like all the way back to.
But why is it marketed towards boys?
Yeah.
The thing is, it goes back further than
Yeah,
just the
it's
marketing.
All the way back to like the first Mario games.
But it's still cultural. It goes back beyond that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
So
I feel like it's almost a problem that's sort of solving itself as the industry gets bigger. Like as industries, entertainment industry.
I'll tell you what,
actually more
one of the barriers for women getting into the industry, from what I've heard, so we love you, Alex, can correct me, but when we see a job description as a man, yeah, if we can, if we see 30% of what we think we can do is a job description.
Do people actually do that? Is that
Yes.
Yeah.
But the research has shown that women.
Yeah, every single thing. I won't.
We need to tick.
Yeah,
most
most
of it in order to go for
yeah.
it. And I can vouch for that.
Yeah, same.
I can vouch for that.
So, you know, when you look at a job description, chances are that most of the stuff you're asking for, you don't need. You know, what you really need is
It's nice to have. Something,
you need to like sell your jobs if you want to bring in good talented people. So these are jobs that anyone can do, you know, and you don't necessarily need to know a language or a technology or a framework. You just need the aptitude to do this, yeah, and that will open up the doors for women who feel intimidated by all this jargon.
I was just thinking, no, it's just on a similar note, it's not related, just remembered something. So I've heard this same thing, and it is true. I would never apply for a job unless I ticked all the boxes.
Yeah.
So I said I was a software developer originally. I failed probation, I won't go into details why, but I failed probation, and I was looking for another job, and I'd lost a lot of confidence. I felt like I wasn't very good at anything, because I had 2 jobs and they hadn't gone well. And I saw this web developer job come up, and I did not think I was qualified. I had no real world web dev experience. But I applied on a whim, not because I knew, 30%. I just thought, I need the experience. I'm going to practice doing a job application. Got through the first bit, got invited to an interview. Okay, cool, it's more in practice. And I kept doing this until I actually got offered the job. And I remember being like, is this what boys do? Is this what you guys actually do? And I remember when they offered me the job, I genuinely went, really? Are you sure? Like, what do you mean? I was like, well, I don't have any experience. Why? Oh yeah, but you've got passion. We like that. And I just remember thinking like, that is amazing that actually does work. But it does, fit with this idea. I don't think that's necessarily the issue why women don't go into it, but I do think it is fascinating about the way men and women's brains work.
That's the way. That's the problem I've got at the moment. Is me trying to get a job. Is I've got no confidence whatsoever because I feel like I'm down here.
Yeah.
And that is,
Try
I'm
to
on the
apply,
same page.
genuinely just apply for random
we need
jobs.
to sort it out now.
Yeah.
We need to be
actually, if you want to get self-esteem, go on LinkedIn, put that you're applying for jobs and just wait.
Yeah.
You'll be amazed at the amount of random recruiters that will, and it makes you feel so good about
If I manage to do it, anyone can manage, honestly.
Yes. I still get at least 3 emails a month being like, you look at it and some of them like
I've had 3 from the same guy in the last week and a bit. He's a little bit desperate.
I totally fall under the. I've looked at the last 2 jobs I've had. On paper, not meeting the requirements for what was written in the thing. But I went in and had to talk. Was honest about it. You know, I didn't know things, but that earned me brownie points for being honest about it. And yeah, it's weird to think that. Yeah, I've never really considered sort of the other side of it, like that you wouldn't sort of take that approach.
Yeah.
I mean, but you know, with these ones on LinkedIn, there are plenty of them that I've seen who've gone, okay, that's too far. That's. I wonder if there are. I'm sure there are people who are more confident than me that will quite happily go that extra mile and be like, yeah, I can totally pull that off.
They need the numbers. They don't care that you're not qualified. Those recruiters just need their paid if they bring in so many candidates.
Well, you need to
Maybe
it's
Oh, I know that too.
If you look at some of the ads, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you. A lot of the ads these days have got at the bottom, we know that if you don't think you tick all the boxes, you're not going to apply, please apply anyway.
I've got
So,
that.
especially those companies that are big on diversity, inclusion, equity, that kind of stuff. A lot of the newer style, if you like, will have.
But I still think there's a problem having it at the bottom, because obviously you
That's very
have to
hard.
read the whole thing.
You have to read the whole thing, and I get halfway
Most
through
people,
and I'm
yeah, exactly. You'll see the thing that you don't have, and then just go.
Yeah.
Especially
Not
also
for me.
because they usually divide it into required and nice to have.
Yeah. And they
But then
usually
if
write a
it's one thing
gazillion
required,
words
you're
that
like,
have
well,
like,
sorry.
yeah.
So I challenge all of you to look at the latest job descriptions going for a role in your company that you think you're aligned to, right? And you tell me whether that's the job you do. Because
I can tell you that looking probably not.
Yeah, no, because they're different. So again, there's another paper written by Stephen Sharp who discusses work as imagined, work as done, work as prescribed, and workers. So work as done, work as imagined, work as prescribed, and work as disclosed. And there's very little overlap between any of those. Yeah. So the person who's writing a job description is probably not you. Yeah. It's someone who imagines what you do. It might be based on what you might have disclosed to that person, but you haven't really disclosed everything you do. You might have only just picked up on a couple of points, and then there's something that becomes a must-have. You talk about must-haves and like-to-haves, yeah? And also the job that's prescribed, right? So a job description as written by somebody is a prescription. This is how you want to do the job. Do you do that job? No, you probably don't. So the best way to bring someone in is to actually find out whether they are good enough to do the job that you do. Yeah. Not whether they meet the job description. So going back to your thing about like, at the bottom of the job description, you don't have to apply for. You can apply for this even if you don't need for this. Well, then what the hell is the job description there? What's the point of it?
So
It doesn't mean anything.
do you think a shorter job description helps?
Yes.
Very sure I'll let you.
Yes.
Just by
As
nature.
someone who's been applying for jobs and losing the will to live, yes. Yes.
I try to get mine down to 3 bullets. In
Like literally, that I love you already. I mean, you should write all of the job descriptions ever, all of them.
And no, and nothing else. None of this
That's
would like
it.
to have, because
It
could be overwhelming when you read like a long page of requirements you need to make.
You don't even.
And
Do you
yeah.
read it? Do you actually
I can't
read it?
because
No.
normally
Okay.
you read the first 3 or 4 bullet
Exactly.
points and then it's okay, this is not for me.
It's not for
But
me.
sometimes you need to push yourself because if you tick all the boxes, there will be no room for improvement. So just like, okay, if you tick all the boxes, then okay, you don't need this job, you need better. You're overqualified, if that makes sense. Okay?
Yeah.
That's my theory, because if you know everything about this job, then you need better job because you're already overqualified.
Well, you
because
want
you know
to challenge
everything.
yourself, obviously.
Yeah, there will be no
Yeah.
room for improvement, if that makes sense.
So the question I'd always ask in a job interview is, this is the project, how would you improve the project? How would you make this project work? Right? That's well, that's
No, it's
that's
good.
a good
That's
question to
actually
ask because I don't need to make a
How
background.
long have I got to think about it though? That's the
I'm
problem.
going to do it now.
That's the problem.
That's the point.
There's a good point about that. That's a good point actually, because there's nothing wrong with sharing with candidates the questions you're going to ask them before the interview, because you wouldn't approach a problem in the real world. Somebody wouldn't say to you, solve this now. We're not going to give you any time to think about it. We're not going to give you any time to do anything about it. You just got to do it now.
That has happened to me.
Yeah.
Well, I've had it. I won't say the company, but there was a job I went for. They brought me in. I had the interview. It was fine. And then they said, right, here's a laptop. It's hooked up to this monitor. Solve this.
Oh yeah,
You
yeah.
can,
You get
you can
those all
Google
the
if you want,
time.
but we can see what you're
Get those
Googling. And I was like, I can't remember where semicolons go now.
No,
and I just literally went,
this is a problem.
I can't do this. I just walked out.
This is a problem with these things. I think the problem. I mean, I think the recruitment industry has been a big weight on computing. You know that we insist upon going through. No, I don't know if any of you, some of you must have done employment. When you think that a recruitment consultant charges you 20 to 25% of an annual salary, and now we're talking for a senior dev in London, £80,000 a year. That's a lot of money. So there's a reluctance to make a mistake because you don't get that money back from from those recruitment consultants. So everything becomes
Well,
about risk.
actually,
I've had money back.
Yeah, it's
I-
very hard.
No,
It's
there
like
are
trying-
agencies that do free replacements. Or something.
Yeah, it's very hard.
So I know it's because my sister was in recruitment.
Because what is it often says, it often says you get some money back if you do it within 3 months. And you often don't know in 3 months whether somebody is actually up to the job, because it takes them 3 months to find out where the lavatory is. I think over the top here, but when you've got the domain knowledge, when you've got to understand the domain knowledge in any complex system, is going to take time, and you won't know for quite a period of time whether that person is actually capable of understanding that domain knowledge. So it all is stacked against this idea that we're all on that short-term thing. So we write job adverts that aren't about what we want; they're about what we aspire to be, as you say. And we end up with job applications that have got nothing. I mean, like the job I do now, it's got nothing like the job application, the job description that I applied for. Nothing at all.
Yeah, actually.
And the other thing as well, just to add to that, is quite often we advertise jobs for a very short-term period. We only want that person to come to the company there to do this, but we recruit them as permanent employees. Right, so what do you want that permanent employee to do in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, 15 years' time, 20 years' time? Because that's just as important as day one, you know. But we only think about the short-term benefits of bringing that person on. But in 20 years' time, those languages that you're pushing today, they're not going to be relevant in 20 years' time. Is that person got the aptitude to learn those new skills, learn and develop them, and help your company develop and improve? Because that's what you ultimately want from an employee.
Yeah, I mean, I don't use any. I mean, I've been probably roughly about the same time as you, about 20. In 1995, I started in. It's actually it's close to 30 years. So it's probably longer than most of you have been alive. But obviously, I don't use any of the tools. Perhaps SQL is the only tool that I use now that I use.
SQL is immortal.
Unfortunately, yes. But I don't use any of the tools that I use then. I don't even use any, very rarely use any of the techniques I was using, or any of the things I was taught at university.
I'm very conscious of the time. Is there anybody? That's fine, okay.
There's 3 questions.
There's 3 questions there, but before I open to those 3, is there anybody that hasn't asked a question that wants to? At the back.
Just like for anyone in the room, okay? So
not the security guy, just
anyone, because I think you've all got different perspectives of this. This is good. So working in education, teach computer students, computer engineering students. We always struggle with what is it that they need when they start their first job. What's the thing that they all lack? So we're like, we try to teach them version control, projects, and teamwork.
I love to say we try.
We try to, they can't merge.
You did an apprentice today failing to merge.
My point. No, I'm interested because obviously the job market is like there are so many jobs, but so many applicants per job, right? And so graduates struggle to get jobs. So what is it that they're missing when you take them on? You're like, I wish they did that.
I've got my hand up.
Yeah.
We'll start there and we'll go around that way. How's that?
Cool. I would say where.
Go for it, Alex. Go for it.
There's no knowledge that you should have going in, like especially for like entry level. Interest and enthusiasm beats all else.
Our students are fucked then.
Yeah. We are recording, by the way.
Okay, so we'll carry on down the room this way and look that way. So this, Alex.
Yeah, so I was just thinking, because I remember my first day, I was a graduate software developer, and I remember coming in, get the computer set up, like, okay, you need to get the code base from, it was Visual Studio. I did not know how to do that, because obviously everything we'd been taught, we were using BlueJ or something. And it was I know how to code, but I had no idea how to get how the environment worked, and I had to get somebody to show me. I was like, I promise I didn't fake my degree, I do know how to do this, but I have no idea how the environment works. And I do feel like those are the kind of things that need to be taught. It's not just, you're not just going to be given the code and go write it, you are going to have to work with it. Like version control. So
That's
that would be my big thing, is if
really
you can
bad
encourage them to.
induction. That's a really, really bad induction.
Yes.
You should spend about
I
the
didn't
first
get an induction. Then it
first
just here's the
week,
you to go.
at least the first week should be spent, how does the environment work? What does the tools you need?
Oh, yeah.
How do we download these tools?
Even as a
Where's the
senior,
wiki?
I know
Where's the
actually
wiki that tells me how to
I
do
already
that?
have wikis.
I have one.
I'll come back to you, Alex. I'm going to go around the room. So at the back there with the long hair.
How to talk to stakeholders, how to like discuss what a project's going to do and what you can do for it. So like instead of being just prescribed at university, this is what you need to get done. This assignment is right. I can do this week. Is this what you need?
Yeah.
That's good. It's all about outcome. It's about what outcome can you deliver. It's not output, but it's outcome.
Okay, now I think we're snaking back down this way, so check shirt, chess player.
Stereotype check.
Observational.
Right, so the job I've just got, I walked into, well, it was remote, I went into the interview and they said, what would make you take the job?
Oh.
Right? And that was the weirdest interview I've had.
Money?
Give me the money!
The only right answer.
So what did you say?
The only possible answer. Oh, shut up. Whatever you said is bullshit. Bullshit.
It's not bullshit. What did I say? I said, I talked a whole load of rubbish about like what's the environment like to work in and how I care
told
about
you
people.
bullshit.
And it's all a load of bullshit.
Money.
No, there is one thing other than that.
Hang on.
Hang on. We're snaking.
So there's one thing which is, I've also been in interviews where I went to a hedge fund for an interview once I think, and they basically gave me a booklet, questionnaire, QA, things to answer, and it was write code off the top of your head in Java, syntactically correct, for doing a whole load of like fintech transaction stuff. And I was just like, what the hell is
So
this?
what was your answer though to the question?
Fuck you.
What
That
What
should have
what
been the answer.
would make you say yes to the job?
Oh, what makes the yes the job?
Yeah, you
Yeah.
didn't say what the answer was.
What do you say?
No, he talked about
the environment.
He talked about the environment.
Okay, surely
Did you take the job?
the only right way.
Yeah.
The only right way to answer that question would be a list and to start off at number 2.
No. The only right way to answer that question is, I'm going to take 6 weeks off. I'm a contractor. Can I start in 8 weeks' time? And they say yes, and you say this is impossible. I'm going to take the job. So that's what happened. But what's more important is there's a huge range of what employers do. There is no single answer. The only thing that really matters is, does the person care about taking the job?
Yeah.
Are they enthusiastic? And do they want to improve themselves? And if they can answer those 3 things, then they might get a job. When I was at IBM, I took a graduate scheme at IBM, they deliberately employed people who didn't have computer science backgrounds. They employed musicians, people with music degrees, they employed people with English degrees, with English backgrounds, no knowledge of computing at all, because they wanted variety, and they'd actually found that some of their best mainframe engineers came from non-computer science backgrounds.
I think there's also a certain amount of snobbery about that as well, and about the idea that we want to train you to be the way we want. We don't want you coming along with any of those strange computer science ideas.
If your goal is to get a job, be open-minded.
Our friend at the back.
The times that I've been involved with taking people on, often from university of courses, I kind of whisper in their ear that they've got a superpower at that point in time, and it won't last forever, and it's the ability to ask very senior people what appear to be very silly questions and get away with it. Okay? And what you normally find is that the senior people revel in being able to answer those questions, because they just like doing it, it's helpful. And the juniors get to accelerate their learning like no other. Okay? They just ask all those tricky, awkward questions, and it's all over and done with within the first few weeks, and they're off and running. Particularly in journalism roles, a new journalist is great because they get to ask the questions that the senior journalists are too scared to ask. Okay? But all they need is they need the bravery to do it, because it's a frightening thing. You know, who wants to be a new employee that asks an apparently stupid question to an important person, where in reality that's exactly what they need to do. And the more they do that, the quicker they learn. And so it's, I say it's bravery to do that. Yeah.
I mean, they're not the same question.
That's what you're going to say, okay.
With the exception that they can't stop, like, there's no requirement to stop asking stupid questions.
No, that's right, yeah, yeah.
I'm now that senior and I'm still asking the dumb questions.
And that's what
It's
I did
acceptable.
in the medical role.
Yeah.
I went to a small medical startup, I asked the CEO all the stupid questions.
Yeah.
She sat down and we went through it, drew those papers up.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And she's like, and we got on our house in time. And that's-
Anyone
and
in
then I
here called
thought,
Andy and got a taxi booked?
Anybody in here called Andy with a taxi
No.
booked?
Taxi for Andy. No.
Glenn, I think you were going to say something?
Yes, I was going to go back to the whole idea about universities, teaching graduates. How many people here have got a computer degree? Right, so how many of you use those skills you learned at university? Like David.
Because you're teaching it at university.
Because you're teaching.
So about half of you, about half of you, apart from the corner over there, about half of you hands up now. Which to me suggests that perhaps, that what you were saying earlier about IBM, like taking on non-computer science graduates is actually, okay, because I mean my background is in languages. I studied language at university. I've got no computer science degree, but the aptitude I had for learning, helped me. It's given me that. I've always remained curious throughout my career, and I think that's important. If you've got somebody in your team that seems to lack that curiosity, they seem to be stuck in their ways. That's a warning sign that perhaps, they're going a bit stale and perhaps need a challenge. But that's all I was going to ask really is. How many people are actually using what they did in a computer science degree? I should imagine the older ones, you probably learn things. You've probably learned things at university that today just don't exist. I mean, I remember I was working for a company down in Chatham many years ago, and there's a university down in Chatham. We shared a canteen with tutors, so not with the students. And one of the tutors taught computer science, and he hated Microsoft, absolutely hated it with a passion. This is back in the 1990s when Microsoft was 80% of the programming language, was on 90% of desktops, right? If you're teaching your students the attitude that they should hate Microsoft, they're not going to get a job at that time because everybody used Microsoft. And we found that when we was interviewing people saying, do you know BASIC? Do you know Windows? Do you have networking skills using Microsoft servers? These people didn't have a clue, but they knew Linux very well, they knew Unix very well, they knew Pascal, COBOL, whatever languages that they were taught at university, but old languages. Now, I wasn't going to turn those people away because they didn't know those languages. It's not their problem, it's not their fault. But do they have the skills, the ability, and the aptitude and the desire to learn those new skills? And we found that those students that worked at universities that hated Microsoft with a passion, they did not want to learn Microsoft. And as a result, we couldn't offer them that role. And that didn't seem fair to the students, to be honest. But, so you've got to be very careful that you're not influencing students the wrong way.
Gentleman in the front.
So, a couple more things. Big companies, like a graduate scheme at a big company, they may get 100 CVs for every one application. And when that happens, they are literally, students are spending a lot of time throwing effort into getting a job, and they're just being thrown away. The ones who get the job, fantastic, but there's a whole bunch which are being thrown out on spelling mistakes, like a bunch of people in other countries checking that their CVs look okay. Then, the other problem is something called imposter syndrome. Now, the biggest problem with imposter syndrome is nothing to do with new people. It's to do with everyone. I was looking after, I was in a company where there were like 10 other principal engineers. And I was organising a meeting with the principal engineers on a regular basis. And one time the topic of imposter syndrome came up and we talked about it. And we said, between us, 60%, 66% of us basically said, we feel imposter syndrome at a high level.
Yep.
Like we don't actually know everything that we feel like we need to know. And it's overcoming that barrier and saying, actually, if you're going to take a job, the biggest problem that you've got in trying to overcome taking a role is that admission that I'm not going to know everything. But don't worry, I'm going to try and learn if you give me the right guides.
sort of circle that back to the thing we were talking about earlier on about about the women and 30% of the thing. I think the trouble is that I know this as a senior engineer myself. That, you know that you don't know half of it. You know where to find out when you don't, and and you just do the rest of it by the seat of your pants. Seriously, I have gone into jobs where I do not know what I'm doing, and it's how quick and can you work out what you should be doing before anybody else notices that you can't do it. And that sums up a lot of my career. And I think I think that says something wrong about the industry as well. It's not just about, there's nothing to boast about.
I think it shows off your skill.
Well, bullshit. Yeah, I think bullshit. I think that's something for your students. Learn to bullshit. Learn to read the executive summary.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, one of the key ones my youngest son is actually very good at this. Is repeating back what you've just heard 5 minutes later. So if you're in an interview and somebody says something, somebody senior particularly says something at the beginning of the interview, say it back to them 5 minutes later. They'll have forgotten they said it, and you sound like you're really bright because you're saying something that they know is true. And that's sort of, it's that sort of thing. I mean, on a serious note,
those are the people we take lots of effort to filter out.
Yeah, they're very hard. It's hard to filter out because of the way that human brain works.
Yeah, so don't listen to them.
I'm afraid we are going to have to wrap it up. I don't know if the panelists will be around a bit at the end.
Young guy has found the question.
Happy for one more question from
one last question.
Alex, as a freelancer, how do you go about actually finding jobs?
I can't think now. So obviously I've been doing this for a long time. So initially, I don't know how I did it. Just skin it through my teeth really. At the moment, what I've been doing is collaborating. So I do a lot of networking all over the country. And I found that actually working with other tech companies was the best way to get working because people seem to have this weird misconception that if you work in IT, you can do everything in IT. So there'll be I noticed that I was talking to a lot of, like, say, security companies, and they go, "Oh, do you do websites?" No, obviously I don't do it. Why would I make a website? So I started finding other IT companies and saying, well, if you do marketing or you do this, can we work together? That's where a lot of my work comes from now. And then obviously you do one job for somebody, and then suddenly, because I do bug fixes a lot, I found that then I get recommended because, oh, hey, that thing's exploded. I know someone that can make it unexplode. So that would be my. Are you thinking about going into freelancing then?
No, I'm still a student.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm just
you're the baby.
wondering.
You're the baby. Sorry, please come back.
Okay. Well, thank you to our panel. We can put our hands together.